was going into the wilderness season, I will be honest with you, I complained to God quite a bit. And I'm thankful that he still lovingly walked me through it. But it's the truth, right? When I had to shut the daycare down, it was like, Lord, forgive me, but I really missed the daycare because yeah, it was chaotic and crazy, but I had 10 grand a month coming in, right? Like, I worked 5 years for this. Right? It was something that I could lean on, so I didn't have to trust God. What God is wanting is he's wanting you to know the authority you have. He's wanting you to walk in the authority that you have. He's wanting you to trust him as you walk through these seasons. Look at the wilderness. What were the Israelites? Complained about bread, complained about manna. If he did not make it where they had to depend on him alone, they would have still been, I don't know how to explain this, Lord, help me figure this out. For example, right, in the wilderness season, you can know when you're in a wilderness season because God will give you just enough, right? They had manna, they had quail, more than they needed for the day. But if they would try to hold on to it, they'd try to covet it, they'd try to take it on, it would rot and get gross, right? So what God was showing them is, yeah, no, you're not in control. You don't realize the bondage you were in. You don't realize how codependent you were on abuse. You don't realize how dependent you were on the bondage that I just brought you out of. So I'm going to have to walk you through step by step where you got only bread and manna every single day, but they had enough. They had more than enough. But in their mind, it was just so uncomfortable for them because every day they had to wake up and hope that God would show up for them. And every single day, God did. And so it's a very powerful lesson to be able to talk about because it's exciting, right? Like to really think about the fact that the seasons that we're in, God is really setting us free. He is really setting us free from any chain that can cause us to be hindered. And it's exciting, but it's also understanding why your flesh feels the way it does, right? The more that you feel uncomfortable, that's how the Israelites felt in the wilderness. They didn't have a home that they were used to going to, right? They had a bed, whether it was not a good bed, whether they had a tiny home made of brick, they still were used to it. So because they were used to it, they missed it. They had become dependent on it. And so that's where you see so much rebellion that happens in the wilderness where they are so afraid or almost like their doubt is so much greater than their faith that they have to create an idol, a cow, right? A golden calf as a statue to worship because they needed something tangible because they were so used to the world. They were so used to being in bondage to the Egyptians that that's how they thought they were, right? Like, well, at least we had something to worship. At least we had this. At least we had that. At least we had that. Instead of identifying, wow, God, thank you. Like, I didn't realize how much bondage I was in. I didn't realize that I had a bondage to debt. I didn't realize that I had a bondage to people pleasing. I didn't realize that I had a bondage to self-sabotage, right? We're so used to these things that they become these really bad habits. And so it becomes where God, it's just amazing. Every time that I read about the wilderness season and how they walked into the promised land, how they had to walk through those trials in 40 years, which was not supposed to be that long, is because they struggled so bad with codependency from the Egyptians. They struggled, right? So how many of us are in that situation where like God has to be patient with us? You know, I was so used to being talked down to, I would attract that. I would seek it out. I would seek people that needed me. I would seek people that were broken because I needed to feel needed. I needed to feel accepted. The Lord's wanting me to share this with you, so I will. When I was in my season of wilderness, it was before me and Aaron had restoration. I, at one point, you know, he pulled me. Okay. All right. I get it. God's talking to me. Okay. So when I shut the daycare down, right? I shut the daycare down and I was working 75 hours a week. Yes, I made $10,000 a month, and that was pretty good for a single mom of 3 kids, right? Like, that was my mindset. I spent 5 years. I had 7 schools I was transporting to. I had 30-something kids. I had 2 assistants. I had built this thing up by the grace of God. And so when he showed me it had become an idol and he wanted me to trust him and not my wallet, of course, at the end of the day, I was obedient and I did it. But I came out of that. And so when I came out of that, he put me in a situation for 3 months where I had to lean on him every single day for manna and for quail. I had literally, like, ladies, down to the penny, the exact amount I needed for bills, but nothing extra. I had nothing extra to pay debt. I had nothing extra to pay for food. I had nothing extra. And it terrified me to bits. To be honest, I had 11 people living with me. And so my children and I lived in the master bedroom, but I lived in a bed and my children each had their own beds, but we were all together in one room and I was paying most of the majority of the bill because I didn't know how to live in the promised land. I didn't know how to live where God really wanted that house for me. But I couldn't in my mind see that, okay, well, Lord, I get you're telling me that's my house, but I don't see financially how you're going to provide for this. So since I don't see it and I don't have the faith to wait to see it and to watch you show up, I'm going to step ahead of you and I'm going to do things my way. And that's how the enemy opened that door. And so, not to try to get off on a tangent, but to explain to you how easy it is, ladies, if we don't stay in that resting season, right, with the wilderness, if we don't stay in that wilderness season and we don't embrace what we need to feel and we don't release what we need to release, we can attract the same type of situation. The reason why I shared all this with you is because it is so easy for the enemy to get something familiar. And that's what he will do. He will use familiar situations, familiar people, familiar circumstances to try to draw you back in to not trusting God fully, leaning on your own understanding, and putting you back in bondage. And it took me, ladies, months to get out of that bondage. Financially, it took me months. God is sovereign. He is faithful. He is amazing. I guess I needed a longer wilderness season. I needed to go around the mountain again. Just really understand how God's sovereignty works and how God is very intricate. And so I know if a lot of you ladies, I'm sure you can relate to this, where you helped that person on the street or you helped that person with this or you helped that person with that and you didn't ask me. And that if he's blessing you or promoting you this season, don't feel like you need to bring everybody with you into the season you're in because they might not be ready for it. And so lovingly thank God that he was able to cover the people, the 11 people that lived with me. He was able to help them to get their own places. But I learned my lesson, right? Because we don't want to enable anybody. If we enable somebody, we're robbing them of going on that journey with the Lord. We're robbing them of their prodigal season that they need to go on to heal the soul wounds that they have. We don't want to rob people and the journeys that God has them on for purpose. We don't want to rob them of that. And so I hope this kind of encourages you because that's really codependency. Right? It's where one or the other is codependent. If you are feeling uncomfortable, stay there. If you are feeling comfortable, identify. What's making me feel comfortable? Now I feel comfortable now. Why? I'm comfortable walking on water. I'm comfortable on it. I've learned to run on the water. I've learned to dance on the water. It took some time, right? But it's just because my faith in God has increased and grown so much. And his trust in me has also grown. And so in that, I don't need to depend on me. I don't want to. I don't need to. I don't need to depend on people. I don't need to depend on jobs. I don't need to depend on ministries. I don't need to depend on anything but God. And so it's exciting, because as you get to this place where you only depend on God, then God will give you favor with man. Then God will give you favor with platforms. Then God will give you favor in different arenas and realms of your life. But it's when you don't need it that he will give it. And so I really hope this encourages you guys. I hope this blessed you guys. But that was the biggest thing he showed me, is leaving the pit. We need to walk out of Egypt and not look back. So if any of you are complaining about the fact that you're only getting manna and you're getting quail every day and you want more, we got to go back into that, right? We talked about that. Thank you, God, that I get to be. Season does not last forever. And if you're in a different season in every realm of your life, that's okay. But it's the fact that they will not last forever. It is just for a season. This time will pass. So be encouraged, because what you're learning now is for where he's taking you there. So be excited by that. Be excited that you get to learn. Be excited that you get to heal. Be excited that you get to trust him, because that's kingdom. Kingdom is fully trusting God in all realms of life. And whenever you feel like you're not trusting him, you need to surrender. You need to let go.